Hello and welcome to App Stories. I'm John Voorhees, and with me is Federico Viticci. Hey, Federico.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing really well because I can see you. Hello there.
I can see. It's not like we haven't seen each other in a while.
No,
but
it's true.
In the context of
true.
App Stories, I guess it's the first time we're seeing each other remotely.
It is. After 7 years. How about that? We finally turned on the cameras, and here we are doing App Stories for
Well, I can't believe you
YouTube.
look like that, John. It's.
I know. Look at me. I mean, here I am. I'm wearing my fall flannel. I'm ready to go.
I thought you had long blonde hair. To be honest.
I did until just a couple of weeks ago. It all went at once.
Oh, I see.
It all went at once.
I see. Interesting. What happened?
That was a wig. Actually, that was a wig the last time you and I saw each other.
Cool. Well, that's not
break out the wig.
Interesting. All right, cool. So that being said, we're doing a video version of App Stories. You may have seen, obviously, that with the expansion of the MacStories family of podcasts, we've started approaching video in our YouTube channel. It all started with Comfort Zone, and later we expanded it to MPC. And now it's App Stories' turn to turn on the video cameras and have, in addition to the audio version of the show, which is not going away, especially if you are an App Stories Plus member, that's still going to remain audio only because there's no way to do a members-only feed with video on YouTube. So the audio component is something that we really believe in, and it's something that is never going away because it's how I like to listen to my podcasts, and they have to be audio. Here. So, but at the same time, just like we said, for Comfort Zone and for MPC, there is an increasing demand from a portion of our listener base who's asking for a video version of our shows. Maybe because they like to have the additional context of the video. Maybe because they like to see our faces, which is, a legit request. Maybe because just like a video version is a better way to keep people company. Maybe you're at work and you're opening YouTube and you're putting App Stories in the corner of the screen. I mean, it's not like I'm recommending it, but I'm also not saying it's wrong.
Well, think of the offices around the world, Federico, where our faces are now positioned.
They can do it. They can do it. Think of all the computers running Windows 10 still having YouTube open on the MacStories channel, listening and watching App Stories. So that's the goal.
Go for it.
That's the goal. We can have two versions of the same show. The audio is not going away, but it's also going to be video now. And obviously video is very much an open public experiment for us. We're learning as we go, and we're tweaking our setups as we go. And obviously, the goal is to improve over time. So that's what we're going to do. That's what I'm going to do. I'm still not satisfied with the gear I have, but I'm working on getting to a better place for even better quality. And so, this is fun, but this is still going to be the same regular show.
Yeah, it is going to be the same regular show. And we're experimenting with other things too. We've done some bonus content for NPC that is only on YouTube. We'll probably do something similar to that at some point when it makes sense for App Stories.
Yeah.
And we're starting to incorporate video into some of our content on MacStories.net. So, you'll find a couple of reviews I've done recently of Logitech devices that had videos associated with them. So it's giving us the opportunity to kind of expand and offer a kind of a richer experience for some of the other things we do as well. So we've got more ideas to come. So go over there and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because even if you're not a podcast listener on YouTube, there are reasons to go over there and check it out as well. All right, Federico, we need to talk about the Club MacStories fall event, because we did this last year. It was the first time we ever did it, where we are offering a discount on annual plans as well as a bunch of special perks for existing members. And in terms of the discount, we don't discount club memberships very often, but this is a 20% off deal for annual memberships, whether it's a Club MacStories membership, a Club MacStories Plus membership, or a Club Premier membership. All three of those annual plans are 20% off now through November 1st. So there will be a post over on the site. The code, if you just want to use the offer code, is Club 2024. Mm-hmm. And we'll also have links in that article that you can click on. That'll take you right to the sign-up page. So that's what we're doing in terms of discounts, but there's a lot more going on, because this fall event is about more than just having a good deal for new members. And this, the deals apply to anyone who is brand new to the club, has had an expired membership, and is coming back to the club. So those are the two categories. Is there a third club? Is there a third category, Federico?
It's people who are new, people who are existing subscribers and want to upgrade. It's people
That's
who
what it is.
had
Upgrades.
their subscription expire and maybe want to try out the club again. Yeah, it applies to
Right.
really everybody. Maybe you had an account years ago and now you want to
Right.
check it out again. You can take advantage of it. But yeah, it's the last year we did this first membership drive and it was really successful and it really showed us how much we're lucky to have people who want to support us on a weekly or in this case annual basis. And we put a lot of work into the club and we put a lot of work into not just obviously receiving people's money, but I don't like to look at it as a donation because it's not a donation. Maybe you think of it as a donation, but for us, it's not. For us, we want to provide value in return. And that's something that I've always tried to make the foundation of the club. It's just not a way for people to support MacStories with a donation. It's so that they can get extra content, or extra perks and bonus stuff and an exclusive look at how MacStories works. You need to get something in return. So that's why we work hard, whether it's a newsletter or the premium versions of the podcasts, the Discord, the deals, the giveaways, like all the things we do it for this sort of North Star of we have people supporting us and they need to get something back from us, right? So that's what we do.
Right.
And to make this occasion special, we're going to do, like John said, 20% off the annual plans again. But we're going to try and celebrate with as much content as we can cram it in the 10 days or so of this promotion. Yeah, it's gonna be columns. We're gonna hang out on Discord. We're gonna do. In fact, just shortly. I guess if you're watching this episode, as soon as it's coming out, we're gonna be live in Discord to talk about this little thing. More on this in a few minutes. We're gonna be live in Discord to talk about that. There's gonna be giveaways. There's gonna be discounts. We're gonna do a whole bunch of things to celebrate. Yeah, this annual membership drive, the second annual, I guess we can now say, because last year
We can.
first annual is always kind of funny, but now it's the second annual. Now we can
It
finally
is.
say it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've got a special column coming later this week, so that'll be kind of fun. That's going to be a Club MacStories Plus and Premier column that we do from time to time. And yeah, the club has become an integral part of MacStories. We really couldn't do all the things we do without the club.
No.
It really has been why we're doing 6 podcasts now,
Yep.
why we have a whole staff of writers who are helping me and Federico man the site and write the columns for it. So yeah, it's a big part of what we do, and it's going to continue to be. And we're hoping to grow the club because growing the club means growing the club, but it also means growing MacStories in general as well.
Yeah. Oh, we absolutely couldn't do all the things we do if it weren't for the club, especially given the current times for publishers on the web. So
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, Federico, before we get into that little iPad mini that you showed off briefly there for a second, I want to do a little follow-up from a couple of episodes ago because we
Okay.
put out a call to listeners about a couple of different things. And I asked for a great gradient app. And I got one
yes,
that
you did.
I did. I got one that I wouldn't say is quite what I would consider great, but it's the best one that I've
Oh, so
found
it's
so
not
far.
great, but it's good. Would you say it's good?
I would say it's very good. It's I don't know where I'd put it on it's not best I love you, but I would put it
Right.
somewhere a couple of notches down on the Tichy scale.
Okay.
But it's called Mesh Gradient Ultimate, and it's a Mac app. And what it allows you to do is it has a lot of built-in gradients in it. And when you open up a new gradient, that's just kind of a starting point. And you can pick from a bunch of different formats, sizes, whether you're creating a gradient for like a Mac screen or for an iPhone wallpaper, a bunch of different kind of set sizes. And then it gives you a choice between a variety of different points on the screen that you can adjust. You can drag them around, and those change where the colors are originating from and where the kind of the light sources are in the gradient. And those colors can then be changed by clicking on those dots. and then using a color wheel to pick different colors. So you can make something. What I did is I immediately made something that looked really awful. But once you get your get your legs under you and you understand kind of how the different pieces of this app work, it does a very nice job, and it's free to download and play with. If you pay for it, you get more sizes and other things that allow you to do more with the app. And I've been fiddling around with it a little bit over the last week or so, and I've kind of liked it. So if check out, I'll put a link in the show notes, but it's called Mesh Gradient Ultimate, and it was suggested on Mastodon to me by one of our listeners.
Why does it sound like a comic book?
I don't know. It does sound a little bit like that. It is the ultimate, Federico, after all. You asked about speakers, and I don't think you've gotten anything that has satisfied you yet, right?
Clearly, they don't exist. What I'm looking for doesn't exist.
Yeah, I figured that was a tall order, what you were asking
otherwise,
for.
Otherwise, the people would have provided, like they always do.
What was the Spotify feature you're looking for?
I don't know. I don't even remember, man. No, I think it was Spotify Connect.
Yeah.
And the idea that it was going to be a small speaker that looked nice, had Spotify Connect, and ideally could be used on battery instead of just always plugged in. So yeah, maybe at CES, maybe somebody will come out with the Spotify speaker of my dreams. We'll see. All right. Well, do you want to know about this thing?
I do. First, I think, we're going to Federico's going to hold it up and show it off for the YouTube audience, because I think one of the things about this is you need to be able to figure out whether someone has an iPad mini, a new iPad mini, or an old iPad mini.
It's a new iPad mini because it says iPad mini, right?
Yeah, that's one of the main differences.
Let me grab the old one, actually. Because the old one is... I have the old one here.
Yeah.
And it doesn't say...
Is it the same color? What color is your old one?
The old one is purple. And it just says iPad. Okay?
Right.
Whereas the new one, which looks the same, weighs the same, but it says iPad mini. And I guess we can start from here, actually. So I got this. So there's obviously a review on MacStories. This video is going to be embedded, I guess, on the front page of MacStories, so you can keep reading if you want to. I got this on Thursday of last week. So I've used it for almost 6 days. It looks the same, weighs the same, down to the millimeter. It's the same design, same size, same weight of the old iPad mini. I can hold them side by side. Color aside, they're the same iPad. Obviously, the differences are inside, and we're going to get to that in a minute. But there are a couple of external differences. So, like I said, it says iPad mini on the back. On the box, on the package of the iPad mini, it doesn't say iPad mini 7th generation, because that's what it is. The previous one was the iPad mini 6th generation. Right. This one doesn't say iPad mini 7th generation. It says iPad mini, parentheses, A17 Pro. Because that's the system on a chip that it carries. And additionally, even when you go into settings general about, it doesn't say iPad mini 7th generation. The official model name is iPad mini, parentheses, A17 Pro. I don't know what, does it mean this is not the 7th generation? It's the 6th generation design, but with the new system on a chip? Does it?
I think so. I mean, to me, that's a meaningful difference. They picked that on for a reason, I would think. It's not a mistake. Apple doesn't make mistakes in their naming of products. Right?
Okay, let's go with that.
Yeah, they may come up with funny names, but they don't.
Come up with
there's
funny
a reason.
Names, but they don't make mistakes.
Funny names.
Okay,
I agree with you, including the iPad itself back in the day. But yeah, I think that this means that this is essentially the same iPad, just with a different chip. I mean, I think that's what's being communicated, really.
Right. So as I mentioned, the old one I had was the purple color. The new one is the blue color. And this is why I would recommend switch for a second to the video version of AppStories if you're listening to the audio. can you tell that this is blue? Like maybe you can see if I hold it like this, maybe you can see a shade of blue, right?
I think when your lights are more directly on it, I can
Right.
see the
You can
blueness
see
of
it.
it, at least through
But
zoom, but
but
if it's at an angle, it looks very
I'm
silver.
gonna try something else now.
Okay.
This is blue.
Yes, that is Federico's holding up his ultramarine
Yeah.
iPhone
Yeah. So
16 Plus.
if you're coming into this thinking, iPad mini colors fun, if you're coming into this with the mental context of the iPhone 17 Plus, no, forget about it. These are not the same colors. These are not vibrant colors. These are much more muted. How would you even describe them? I'm not sure. These are not the iPhone 16 colors. These are.
It's a hint of color.
It's a hint
is
of
all
color.
it is.
It's a hint of color, which it doesn't.
I would
look,
hold Federico. I would suggest holding it up next to the purple one because I think that does a good job of telling you about how much. Because even the purple one doesn't have a lot of color in it, but if you hold up the purple
it
one
had
compared
more.
to the blue one,
Yeah, you can
it
tell.
definitely is more purple.
It's more purple. I don't think it looks bad. I just think it's kind of boring because in most situations it looks like a shade of gray. But
Right.
Color aside, obviously, as I mentioned, the differences for this iPad mini are about what's inside. Now, it comes with the A17 Pro, 8 gigabytes of RAM, which means this iPad mini can run Apple Intelligence. Now, Apple said Apple Intelligence is coming out next week with 18.1. But I'll give you one funny detail about this review. Now, typically, when Apple sends members of the press review units for iPads or other devices, if there is a current beta version of iOS or iPadOS, typically they release a version of that beta for those unreleased devices that members of the press can put on those review units ahead of time.
Right. And that's usually because of things like the iPhone. A lot of times the new iPhones are coming out and the new version of iOS is going to come out within days of the new iPhone.
Yeah, and it always
makes sense.
Over the years, I mean, I've been reviewing Apple devices since 2015, I believe. So I've seen my fair share of review units. And historically, there's always been a way to get the latest beta on that device, even if that device hasn't launched to the public yet. But not for this one. Even though it gets advertised as an iPad mini with an A17 Pro that lets you run Apple Intelligence, I mean, set aside the fact that I live in Italy, and even if I wanted to, I couldn't test Apple Intelligence.
Right.
I mean, no, technically, if I wanted to, with a VPN and a US account and setting my region, maybe I could, maybe not. But even if I wanted to, still, I'm in Italy. That doesn't matter. Because for this one, they haven't released a beta version of 18.1. Apple told me ahead of time when they sent the review unit, they said there's not going to be an 18.1 beta for this one. So if you plan to restore from a backup of your other devices running 18.1, sorry, you're out of luck. You won't be able to do that. And in fact, that applied to me because both my iPhone and my iPad Pro are on 18.1. And I could just move my system settings, my iCloud account, via the initial setup transfer. I could just transfer my account, my Apple ID, that kind of stuff. But I had to start from scratch because there was no 18.1 and I couldn't restore from a backup. And that was a little strange considering how, especially for I imagine other journalists in the United States unable to test Apple Intelligence on the iPad mini that looks like the old one, and the only difference is that it lets you run Apple Intelligence, but there's no version of it. It's all
exactly
very strange.
That's why it's incredibly strange. I mean, it's unusual even if that weren't the case, but the entire change to this device has been made because of Apple Intelligence, presumably, right?
Yeah. I mean, yes, it's right there in the model name, iPad Mini A17 Pro.
right.
So I guess I should mention a couple of things. Wi-Fi is better than before. We have gone from Wi-Fi 6 to 6E. I do have a 6E setup at home, and realistically, like in my case, I am looking at. It is a substantial difference, right? I was running some speed tests with the old iPad Mini. I have a 1 gigabit fiber connection at home. With the old iPad mini, I could max out at about 600 megabits down. And with this one, I reach, on average 720, 750 sometimes. So it is a difference. And I think especially, when the iPad mini, when it lands on the 6 gigahertz band just right, and you want to stream like from a PlayStation 5, for example, with remote play, or you want to stream from the cloud using something like NVIDIA GeForce Now, like when you can be on that 6 gigahertz band, it really does help a lot, and you can tell the difference. But this is something that we were already able to appreciate with the iPhone or with the iPad Pro. Now, the fact that it's on the iPad mini, it means that this is something that I was thinking about as I was using it. It means that now you have the really good Wi-Fi performance on a device that is much more comfortable for that sort of streaming for gaming than potentially an iPad Pro or an iPhone, because it's bigger than an iPhone, but it's not as heavy to hold as an iPad Pro, both an 11-inch or a 13-inch. And I think one of the takeaways from the story, I think it's an ideal device for game streaming. You can combine it with a variety of game controllers, right? You can mount it.
Sure.
You can use controllers that split in half. You can use like those Joy-Con adapters. You can use all sorts of things, and it's still gonna be comfortable enough. I think for streaming a PlayStation 5 or GeForce Now, or even Steam Link, if you have a computer at home, or maybe you want to use something like Moonlight, if you are okay with giving up 120 hertz refresh rate, this one still tops out at 60 hertz. I think the form factor and the fact that it's so light, it makes it a really compelling streaming device.
Yeah, that to me is one reason that the screen staying the same is so disappointing in a lot of ways, is that it really is a compelling streaming device, and the screen's just not quite there as to where I would like to have it. I mean, I would love to have a high refresh rate OLED screen, to be honest. I mean, I'd like all my gaming to be on OLED, you know that, but yeah, it's not a high refresh rate screen, but it's still, I mean, I've used it for streaming games, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, it really is a size that feels really big, because when you're doing that sort of gaming, you're holding it pretty close to your face anyway. It doesn't need to be a 13-inch iPad Pro, because you're holding it at arm's length, and that size works pretty well for that. It's a little bit bigger than the Sony Portal, obviously. And a nicer screen, really.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention is that they fixed the jelly scrolling issue of the old iPad mini. So the old iPad mini, if you recall, due to the way the display controller was placed under the screen, it basically led to this issue that some people could see immediately. For me, it took me a while to see it, but once I saw it, it bothered me forever. And where basically you would, in portrait mode, and only in portrait mode, you would scroll, and it's almost like the screen of the iPad mini was split in half, and you would see one side of the screen that was scrolling more quickly than the other. And when those two parts were scrolling at different speeds, it led to this wobbly effect, right? Of the text moving horizontally, moving at different speeds. Therefore, the name jelly scrolling.
Yeah, it's a little bit like tearing on some TVs.
It's a little bit
in a
like
lot of ways.
tearing.
It's a similar phenomenon where something's not catching up speed wise at the same rate as another part of the image, and as a result, it gives you this weird kind of wobbly jelly type of response. Yeah.
Now, my understanding is that in this model, there's it's the same display, same color gamut, same size, same brightness. Same IPS panel, but there's an optimized display controller, which means, and I'm not sure if the camera can pick it up, but when you scroll vertically, you don't see the jelly effect anymore. You don't see the wobbliness of the text as you scroll in portrait mode, and that provided that you are okay with the 60 hertz display, and I mean, I'm using a 16 Plus as my main phone, so it's not. I cannot complain, right? Because I use a mix of displays. I have the 16 Plus, but then I get my work done on an iPad Pro with promotion. So I'm okay with it. And for the things I want to do with an iPad mini, I'm okay with 60 hertz, but not seeing the jelly scrolling in action is so much better than the old model. And in terms of hardware, I mean, the USB-C has been upgraded from 3.1 Gen 1 to 3.1 Gen 2, which means you get 10 gigabit per second transfers instead of 5, but
Right.
still the same charging rate. You get Bluetooth 5.3 instead of Bluetooth 5. I'm not sure. I
I'm not
mean,
sure that makes a
better
lot of
support.
difference
Yeah, it really doesn't. I mean,
for most accessories.
you're gonna use this thing with your AirPods. It's gonna behave the same.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi 6E I mentioned, Bluetooth 5.3, and then honestly, like there's nothing else I would mention besides obviously the addition of the Apple Pencil Pro, because
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
iPad
No,
Mini,
that's a big
it's
addition
a
because
big addition. Yeah,
it has a lot of features that you couldn't access
yeah,
before with the old mini.
yeah. So now I feel like Apple is starting this much more compelling story with the Apple Pencil lineup. They kind of spent a few months in the wilderness with the pencil, like it wasn't
Yep.
clear what they were doing, but now it's a pretty simple story. The iPad Mini, Air, and Pro, they all support two variations of the Apple Pencil. You can get, for cheaper, the Apple Pencil with USB-C, or you can get the Apple Pencil Pro. And the Apple Pencil Pro is now supported on the iPad Mini, meaning it allows for, Apple Pencil Hover, for example, is now supported, which I think is one of the most underrated features of the pencil, just especially when you're reading something in Safari and you can hover over
Oh yeah, I love it.
a link, and it shows you the URL of the link. That's super nice.
Mm-hmm.
And it lets you squeeze. So you can assign, for example, a custom shortcut to the squeeze. And so while you're holding the iPad mini with one hand, like something that I always do is, and I don't have the pencil here with me now, but you can hold the iPad mini with one hand, pencil in the other, and you can just squeeze and do something on the iPad, like a shortcut.
Yep.
That's super nice. But otherwise, same Touch ID, same camera, same display without the jelly scrolling, same bezels. It really feels and behaves and looks, except for this iPad mini text here, it's the same iPad mini. Oh, and obviously, the one thing I forgot to mention, there is no longer a SIM card slot.
No,
It's
right.
eSIM only. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
joining the
guess-
iPad Pro.
I guess I should ask you this question that I know the answer to, which is the A17 Pro. Does it make any difference? Have you noticed any performance difference in the stuff you've been doing on the mini?
Honestly, for the things I do on the mini, even the old iPad mini is fine with the A15, right? No, I haven't been able to objectively say, oh yeah, this is clearly better than what I used to do before. But
Yeah.
also, I haven't tried any native iPad gaming. I'm sure there will be performance improvements on the A17 Pro compared to the A15 if you try to run an iPad game, but this is not what I've done with the mini, and I'm sure there will be other reviews that will focus on that aspect. Personally, I decided to prioritize things like streaming, for example, using the iPad mini as this sort of like all-in-one streaming machine for video, for like YouTube, for Apple TV Plus, but also for video games. But I'm sure, if you try Zenless Zone Zero or Honkai Star Rail, whatever, like it's gonna perform better on the A17 Pro than the A15.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. Yeah, and I assume that the kinds of things you're doing besides streaming games and video is reading. I don't know what else.
Reading,
surfing the internet.
Reading something that I guess sort of leading into the second half of the story.
Yeah.
I use it as a device that to spend time, basically. I don't know. I guess a way to describe it.
Downtime, I guess, is what you would call it. Stuff
Downtime,
work.
or spending time on the internet, like whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
But like, okay, catching up on my articles using good links, or catching up on my newsletters using Teachy Tabs. Excellent application. Reddit, Mastodon, YouTube videos I saved in Play by Marcos Tanaka, or just, and this is something that I appreciated about the iPad mini, and it's something that I have sort of latched onto over the past couple of years. What's nice about the iPad mini is that obviously this is not a device I would recommend for work. Right? I'm not saying, even though I tried 10 years ago to make it happen, I did try.
No, I've tried it too, and it's doable. It's just
doable,
not the best.
But I wouldn't say, oh, I'm switching to the iPad mini as my main computer. I could do it. But I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that I used to think that split view on the iPad mini doesn't make any sense. And I don't think that's no longer the case. I think there is a reason for split view and slide over, the traditional iPad multitasking, to exist on the iPad mini. And in the article, I believe I referred to it as ephemeral multitasking. This idea that like, okay, I'm just chilling, right, with this iPad. It's my downtime. Right. Maybe I want to put Ivory on the left side and a video on the right side. Like, there is a reason to multitask, even if you're not working, right?
Right.
That I used to think, oh, that's just silly. But no, it makes sense because, like, especially if you have multiple hobbies, right? And you like to read, you like to watch videos, but also you like to spend time on Reddit or you like to spend time on Mastodon. Like, you can be you can be more efficient at relaxing, which is something silly to say, but stay with me. Like, just which is something that the iPhone doesn't let you do, right? It's not like, I mean, I would like to do it on the iPhone. I got a big iPhone. I would like to split the screen in half vertically, but I cannot. Whereas with this iPad mini, I can just hold it like this, right? I can just hold it like this and with two hands, sort of like a giant Game Boy of sorts, right? And I can just use a split view like this, right? I can just put Safari over here, and then I can just
put it in landscape mode
with my
and
thumb,
put one thing on each side.
With my thumb, I can just do this and drag over here. And here, like, I'm using, as you can see, like, I'm using with my two thumbs, I'm using split view like this, and it's so convenient. So, like, there's something to this idea of multitasking is a spectrum, right? And there's on the very end, I'm using an iPad Pro, I'm docking it at my desk, I'm using an external display, I got 4 windows here, 4 more windows there, and I'm multitasking all the way because I'm working. But there's also, at the other end of the spectrum, there's an iPad mini that I can hold with one hand, split the screen, right? And I'm doing 2 things, even though I'm just relaxing, and I think there's something to that.
There is. And I think that for me, it's as simple as things like being able to quickly save a link when you're reading an article or something like that, or you're watching a YouTube video and, they make a reference, the person makes a reference to something in the description that's linked that you want to save. For me, it's almost always about things like links and having a place to save it or open it to check it out briefly, which is why I've never really latched on to Kindles, for instance, because...
Oh, that's an excellent point. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, my thing with reading is that it's very inherently web reading, and web reading to me is not just reading one thing; it's reading a lot of things and letting your imagination, following your imagination and following the links and discovering new things, and that's why I think the Mini makes such a great device for that sort of thing.
Yeah. This idea of it's the most compact Apple device for split view. Yep. I mean, objectively, it is true. If you want to have split view, it's the most compact Apple device you can get. And it's easier for my hands to hold than an iPad Pro. But then we got sort of like to this, sort of the main idea of this review. And initially I was concerned, right? Because I thought, what am I going to say about this iPad mini? Something that is so similar to the previous one. And the one thing that is different, which is Apple Intelligence, I cannot test for 2 different reasons. One,
it's not even an Italy thing. It's not even available on the device.
And it's not available on the device.
I couldn't do it either. Yeah.
So what am I going to say? So the way I approached this review was more like sort of high level. Like, I turned philosophical for a second and I thought, okay, but what is an iPad mini, really? And I don't know, I was... to be honest with you, John, I was taking a shower when I had this idea.
course you were. Good.
Yeah, it's a really hot shower.
Shower thoughts.
Shower thoughts, and I discovered that really hot showers, they really help. I don't know, maybe they melt my brain or something. But like really hot shower, and I had this idea. Like I was thinking, my brain made this connection. When I was a kid, I was 12. In the year 2000, after the whole Y2K thing
Yeah.
blew over, I remember this commercial that Sony. Yeah, I don't know if you recall these commercials. I don't know if
I didn't know this commercial. I read your review and I was not familiar with it.
Interesting. So in the year 2000, to celebrate and to tease the upcoming launch of the PlayStation 2, Sony aired these commercials for part of a campaign called The Third Place. And the main commercial, and the most creepy one of them all, was created and directed by David Lynch, who you may know from Twin Peaks, for example.
Yep.
And
a
it's
bunch of movies.
It's the ultimate David Lynch commercial. It features this very eerie and cryptic scenario in which it's all black and white, strange noises and screams and music in the background. A man is walking down this hallway, and a bunch of strange creatures start appearing. At one point, the man loses his head, and the head starts floating, and then an arm comes out of the man's mouth, and then the scene changes, and there's a mummy and the arm and a talking duck, and the duck says, "Welcome to the third place." The idea at the time, I was 12, and I just thought, oh man, PlayStation is so cool and edgy. This doesn't make any sense, but it's crazy, right? That was the vibe.
Right.
When you're a kid and you see this commercial, it's completely different from something like Super Mario, right? Even though I was a Nintendo boy myself, but PlayStation 2 was edgy, was cool, and there was this black console with this commercial that didn't make any sense. And later there would be more commercials for this campaign, but they were not directed by David Lynch, even though a bunch of people at the time misattributed those commercials to David Lynch. It's a whole thing. Anyway, at the time, I didn't know this, but then years later, I did some research. This was years ago. I did some research, and I learned that the third place was actually a reference to this concept in sociology, where a third place refers to any social environment that is separate from a person's first place, which will be their home. It's separate from their second place, which will be their work environment. A third place refers to any social environment, like a theater, a park, a club, a coffee shop, a bar, a bookstore, like any place where people go together and socialize and be around other people, outside of the context of their own family or their work environment. And so the idea for the commercial that Sony aired was a PlayStation 2 can also be your third place. It can be the place you escape to, right? And it can be a bunch of different places because of the many, many possibilities created by video games, right? You can play a survival horror, or you can play a role-playing game, or you can drive a car, or you can be Solid Snake, or you can be Crash Bandicoot. Like you could be in all kinds of places. And so that was the idea. And I was reminded, so I made this connection, and I thought, what's funny is that in a way we have seen this concept over the years reflected in the tech industry as well. So if you think about it, most people, I would say, we have two primary devices. We have our phones and we have our computer. The phone is sort of like an extension of ourselves. It's how we send messages, take photos, call people. And the computer is what we use for work. And so in a way, those are pretty much a one-to-one match of the phone is our first place and the computer where we work is our second place. But increasingly, especially over the past decade or so, the tech industry has been sort of obsessed with chasing this dream of, well, what comes after this? Like, is there room for a third place, right? After the phone and after the computer, what can we sell people is basically the idea. Like,
Right,
is there
right.
room for something else? And I mean, in Apple history, you don't need to look too far. You literally look at the original iPad introduction by Steve Jobs, and you see Steve Jobs on stage literally saying, is there room for a third category of device in the middle between a phone and between a laptop, between your smartphone that's always in your pocket and between the laptop that you use for work? Is there room for something in the middle? And that space in the middle, for me at least, has been increasingly filled with devices that don't have the distractions of my phone, all the
Mm-hmm.
messages, all the notifications, all the social media, but also
Right,
don't have all of my responsibilities for work, all of my tasks, all of my work apps, all of my projects, all of my files. And
right.
that can be an iPad mini, or it can be a console like the Aeon Odin Mini, for example, here. Like, it can be
Yep,
a video
yep.
game console, it can be my Vision Pro. These third place devices, as I like to call them, that's what I use for downtime. That's what I use for like me time, right? When I want to read,
Sure.
watch something, watch a movie, play a game, listen to some music, and that just, our friend Mike Hurley would say noodling around. He would use this expression.
Yes, he would. He
He
would.
would just, and so this idea of like, in there's a bunch of third place devices, I think, in tech. Um, for some people, it's an ebook reader. For other
Mm-hmm.
people, it can be a high resolution music player. I got one of those down there.
Yep, yep.
Um, and they all seek to fill this room in between the phone and the computer, right? And I think for me, when it comes to those computery things, right? If it's not playing a video game and I need to choose a device to read something or to browse the web or to watch YouTube, by default, I would go to something like an iPad mini as my ideal third place device that
Uh-huh.
is bigger than a phone, but it's more compact than an iPad. And it
Yep.
just has those things I can escape to, whether it's reading a story or watching a video or watching a TV show. And that sort of how I framed this review.
Yeah, no, I think that that's really interesting, Federico. And I think it goes well beyond the iPad mini in a lot of ways, because
Yes.
in a way, I feel like what you're describing is I think we're not, it's not a new era. I think we're returning to an era of the third place gadget, because for a lot of years after the iPhone was introduced, and then all smartphones became a big thing, whether it was Android or iOS or whatever, the phones just took over everything. They took
Yes.
over, they were the first place, but they were also the third place. And that's where I feel like you see a lot of pushback from people today about, well, maybe I'm going to buy a little portable camera that's just a camera because I don't want to always have, be using my phone to take photos. Or maybe I want to have some way to get away from notifications, have some kind of simpler device that's not my phone that I can do things on. And I think that that's what the iPad mini can be. And it obviously is for you, because you're not putting everything on it that you need for work or that you would use on your phone, for instance. You're using it for very specific use cases. But it's also why now we're starting to see all kinds of gadgets, like the handheld, consoles that we cover on NPC, becoming bigger and bigger, because people want to escape and have their me time with something that's not the phone and that's not a laptop, which to me is also probably one of those things that explains to me why we haven't seen any of these AI gadgets taking off yet, because a lot of them are trying to replace the phone. And I think replacing the phone is probably a bad bet. Becoming the primary third place is a much better bet, because there's room there for something to dominate. Because right now, as you said, there are a lot of things you use for your third place gear, your third place gadget. It's not just the iPad mini, it's also the Aeon Odin, it's also other things that you have, the Vision Pro. And I think that that's going to be the most interesting place in tech in the years to come.
That is an excellent point, and something that I thought I didn't write in the story, but I've been thinking about that. Like, so for some people, will just say, "Well, my phone is also my third place device," and to an
Right.
extent, like phone makers have tried to make it easier to say, for example, enable something like do not disturb or a focus mode, and you can completely change the way your phone operates and the way your phone bothers you. But I still think there's something to the idea of physical separation. When I'm grabbing this thing, I know, okay, it's time for either reading or watching videos or catching up on socials.
Right.
Like that's
Right.
the separation that I have, and which I think is important. It's the reason why something like this, a handheld, it's right. Look, I can unlock this thing. This is like literally Android, right? I can use this, and it's literally Android on the
Yeah, you
modem.
could use it just like a phone.
I
mean,
could
it
use
doesn't
it.
have.
I could use it. I could buy it. I could just say, you know what? I'm gonna just buy a Samsung Galaxy S24, and that's gonna be my emulation handheld. But there's something to the idea of a dedicated machine that does just this, that makes
Right.
it special. And people, I think, increasingly are seeking those kinds of special, dedicated, smaller, more unique experiences. And
That's why the Books Palma took off. I mean, I think that's absolutely why people are attracted to that thing. It has some of the flexibility of a smartphone, but it doesn't have the cellular antenna in it, and it lets you do things like have more portable reading material, but also lets you not just read things on a Kindle, but also surf the web and do all those more traditional, web type reading things.
yeah, and so I think there's really something to this idea of a third place device that maybe years ago was a little bit frowned upon in the as we were pursuing this goal of the phone can do everything. And we have, as a species, we have accomplished that, right? The phone can
Yep.
do everything. Arguably, I could work on a phone if I wanted to, right?
Sure,
I could do it.
Get a little keyboard, and sure you could.
I could get a keyboard. I could connect a USB-C cable. I could mirror my phone to a monitor, and I could work.
Yep.
We have achieved the goal of we can do everything on the phone. But would we want to? Now is the question. And I think
Yeah.
all these devices, and the iPad mini is one of them, proves that there's still something to the idea of it's something separate that it's just yours and you use for the
Right.
things you care about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's nice that we have the option to do those things on phones, because
Yeah.
sometimes that's all you've got with you, and sometimes using your
Absolutely.
phone is where you're going to read a book in the Kindle app, or you're going to do watch your videos on your phone. But it is, like you said, also nice to kind of carve out that space both in your day, but also with your devices, to put that away and use something dedicated to that third place.
Yeah. So that's the story.
All right. Well, I loved it, Federico. Congratulations on getting it done. I mean, there's not a lot different about this iPad, but I think you've really hit on something with the direction you took this review in. So I hope people enjoy it. Make sure you check it out on the website and enjoy the review. You can, of course, find us over at MacStories.net. We are on Mastodon. Go to Viticci.MacStories.net and JohnVorhees.MacStories.net to follow us there. And we're on Threads and Instagram. Federico is at Viticci. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHNVOORHEES. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.
Ciao.